This video is brought to you by BTI Institute, a New Jersey leader in certification-based management training.
So our presentation tonight is on PRINCE2 Agile, and I think you're going to find this presentation interesting. We here in the professional development team, we try to stay abreast of a lot of changes in project management. So we've given you presentations here before, a lot on Scrum, but we've also given you presentations on Scaled Agile Framework, Disciplined Agile, large scale Scrum. However, we haven't given you one yet on PRINCE2. Now, while we're familiar with PRINCE2, what was new to me is I didn't know that there was a PRINCE2 Agile. And so I'm looking forward to tonight's presentation tonight to learn myself. And so our presenter tonight is John Edmonds. He is the Senior PPM Architect at PeopleCert. The portfolio he looks after includes methods and frameworks such as PRINCE2, PRINCE2 Agile, Managing Successful Programs, and Management of Risk. He was a member of the authoring team for the 2009 version of the globally recognized project management method PRINCE2 and a reviewer of the 2017 edition. He has practiced, trained, and consulted in program and project management for over 30 years and has worked with a variety of highly respected accredited training organizations. For those of you who can see the screen, in case you can't tell, John is actually joining us from the UK. So while it is dinner time for you, it's actually nap time, close to nap time for him. So we really appreciate him taking the time out for us tonight. And so without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing now, John, and you can show your presentation, and the presentation is yours.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. Let me just do that straight away. Okay, yes, it's 11 p.m. here in the UK, and it's dark and a little bit cold for this time of year as well. So welcome. It's a real pleasure to be with you, and I've loved the last 15 minutes. Everyone joining and saying hello. That's a really nice start to it all. So I'm John Edmonds, working for PeopleCert here in the UK. PeopleCert are the owners of PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile since the acquisition of the products a couple of years ago. So we're going to be looking at we're going to be looking at both PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile because we need to understand them together to make sense of what they are. Oops. So PRINCE2 has been around since 1996, so it's 27 or so years. So it's well established in that sense, and it predates the sort of growth of agile techniques and approaches. So how does this work? How does an established project management method like PRINCE2 work with the new kids on the block? They're not that new now, of course, but how do these things work together? So as I say, to look at that, what I want to do is to take us through a little process here, looking at what PRINCE2 is, and then alongside that, what is PRINCE2 Agile, and how do the two compare?
John, let me just interrupt you briefly. You're showing the notes view. I don't know if that's the view that you wanted to show.
Oh,
that's
right.
what you're sharing.
Am I sharing that? Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to change it or you want to keep it there. That's fine. I mean, the print is large enough that we can still read it, but okay. I didn't know if this is the view you wanted to show.
Right. Let me change that. I think I can do it like this. Okay.
Oh no, it's still on notes view.
It's still there, isn't it? Yep. Okay. Bear with me a second. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Are we there?
That looks good.
Yep. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so we will look at why PRINCE2 is suitable for any type of project. And that's relevant when we come to look at the use of Agile. And an understanding of the PRINCE2 elements, the main elements that make up PRINCE2 will be useful. And then how the PRINCE2 Agile guidance differs and what that's trying to do. So firstly, what is PRINCE2? And let me just reiterate what John said earlier on. I'm happy to take any comments as we go through. If something's there and you want to make a point or ask a question, please interrupt me. Let's make this into a discussion. So PRINCE2. PRINCE2 is a structured method for managing projects. And it's a method that's flexible, adaptable, and tailorable. So it contains guidance. It doesn't contain a set of rules that say you must do things this way. There's guidance, which we'll have a quick look at. And because of that flexibility, we can use PRINCE2 on any project, regardless of the purpose of the project, what the project is trying to do, or the scale and size of the project. Very small projects will benefit from the use of PRINCE2, but also very large ones as well. In recent years, one of the largest European infrastructure projects took place in the Netherlands, and they used PRINCE2 to do that very successfully. That was in the port of Rotterdam. Whether it's an infrastructure project, an IT project, a marketing, whatever type of project, whatever sort it is, it's possible to use PRINCE2. The organization, public sector, private sector, again, that doesn't matter. PRINCE2 is also used around the world in all sorts of different cultures. So I'm trying to paint a picture here of something that is very flexible and very useful in all sorts of different situations. PRINCE2, as I said, was born in 1996. But then along came Agile techniques, Agile methods. And one of the things that we will look at is the sort of image that PRINCE2 has picked up over the years. And sometimes things pick up images that are not useful, not helpful. And so in around about 2015, it was decided that PRINCE2 Agile would be launched. And the idea of PRINCE2 Agile is how to use PRINCE2 when the project is going to be using Agile behaviors, concepts, techniques, ideas, frameworks. How will that work? That's what PRINCE2 Agile is aiming to do. So it is built around a structure of PRINCE2, and it gives each one of the elements of PRINCE2 an introduction, but then focuses quite clearly on how to use PRINCE2 when the delivery teams, the project team is going to be using some form of Agile. And John already mentioned earlier on about how there have been talks about Scrum, about SAFe, and about several other methods. PRINCE2 Agile is designed to take on board any of those and to allow them to be used on the project. So what have we got in PRINCE2? We've got a method that is built around 3 groups of 7 things. There are 7 fundamental principles of using PRINCE2. There are 7 themes, and there are 7 processes. So let me say a little bit about these, because again, this will stress the flexibility of what PRINCE2 is. And the real fundamental for this is the use of principles. The use of principles make PRINCE2 suitable for any type and any sort of project. It's a principle-centered approach. And I've always liked the Stephen Covey definition of principles, the idea that they are universal elements. They are built around experience. They're not just clever ideas. They're built around good practice over years and years. And principles are empowering. They help practitioners to do a better job. So the principles give us the true north of any project using PRINCE2. So let me quickly take you through the principles and you'll get a sense of what I mean by that. These are the 7 principles. These are the sort of headline names of the 7 principles. And looking at these and thinking about any project you've managed, hopefully you'll be able to see that they are sort of very sensible approaches to running that project. So what we're saying is that any project must have a sound business justification for beginning in the first place, and that business justification must continue throughout the life of the project. We know that many projects continue long after they should have stopped, long after their sell-by date, because things change as projects are being managed and as they're being delivered. The world doesn't just stop and wait for them. Things move on. And sometimes it gets to a point where that project is no longer valid. And at that situation, PRINCE2 would say, okay, it's time to stop the project. It's not justified spending any more money than we have done already. So we need a way throughout the project of continually checking the business justification. We have the second principle of learn from experience. Now we all know that we are encouraged on a project to capture lessons and to write lessons learned reports and various artifacts like that. But it's whether we do actually learn from that experience and whether we put lessons into practice, either on the project we're currently working on or on future projects. And so PRINCE2 builds in learning from experience right from the word go on any project, seeking lessons from previous projects, seeking lessons from my own experience elsewhere. Defined roles and responsibilities to ensure that everybody involved in the project team knows what their role is, knows what they are meant to be doing, their responsibilities, and also the relationships between their role and other roles. So I know what other people are here on the project to do. One of the greatest causes of stress on any project is the lack of clarity over my role and my relationship with other people on the team. PRINCE2 encourages management by stages, a stage being a section of a project. And we don't state the specific number of stages that you will break a project down into, but we say we will need to break it down into at least 2. So you've got the planning, the initiation part, and then you've got a delivery part. So on a small project, that's probably all you need. On larger projects, it's sensible to have various stages along the way. And then the sensible use of management time by manage by exception. This principle is all about giving various levels within the project the authority to deliver what they have to deliver without micromanagement from the level above them. Micromanagement is it's a very debilitating thing to have on a project, isn't it? When everything that you're doing is constantly checked by the level of management above you. But equally bad is when we can't get senior management to give us any decisions, give us any advice. So management by exception is that mid-ground where the project manager is allowed to get on and deliver certain parts of the project within the guidelines that have been set by the senior management. The sixth one down here on our list as a principle is focus on products. Getting an understanding of what it is we are meant to be delivering before we even consider how we're going to deliver. So it's all too easy to go and start to do things without a clear understanding of what the products are, what the outputs, the deliverables will be, and to what level of quality we are expected to deliver them. So a focus on products is a key element in the early stages of planning a PRINCE2 project. And then finally, to really reinforce the flexibility of the whole method, we have this principle which says on any project, you must tailor the use of PRINCE2 to suit that project. Do not just go through every step in the guidance, using every document, using every possible activity and action that's documented. You may not need to do all of those things. You have to be sensible. You have to avoid any sense of robotic project management and use common sense and intelligence in the way that we use PRINCE2. So these principles are the underpinning foundations of any project. Now, of course, we will need to do some other things. So we have 7 themes that support those principles. And the themes, as you can see from the names here on this slide, they are aspects of project management that we will need to be doing throughout the project. And I would imagine that none of these would be a surprise in any way. You know, we'll need to have plans of various types. We want a business case for the project. We'll need to understand the quality of what we're doing. We will need to have an organizational structure for the project to set out the roles and responsibilities. We need to control, monitor, and check the progress of our project. And we need ways of reporting on that and making changes as we go through. We will need to manage risk, all the uncertainties, all the threats and the opportunities that might come our way on the project. What are we going to do about those? How do we respond to risks? What steps do we put in place to mitigate those risks? And we'll need to keep control of any change that is requested by anybody concerning with the project. So making sure that we have a change control mechanism that doesn't allow massive scope creep and uncontrolled change to happen, thereby sort of losing any control we have on the project.
Hey, John.
So these will, yeah, sure.
All right, sorry. Where's cost in these themes?
Cost would be a subset of the plans theme. So it would be where we would we'd set out the products we're going to deliver, and then look at the activities needed, the resources, the people needed, and then start to do the various estimates on time, on cost, and so on.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. On that point, by the way, we also have in PRINCE2 a number of, I suppose we could call them performance targets. They are targets that we set for things like cost and time, scope and quality, benefits and risk. We have those 6 areas. And for each of them, we set a target, or maybe a target at the project level, target at the individual stage level, and we would then set tolerances around those as well. So that's our cost figure, but we are prepared to to have a flexibility of plus or minus 10%, say. So those are built in to all the various parts of the project. So 7 principles supported by 7 themes, and then delivered by 7 processes. The processes in PRINCE2 really describe the journey from beginning to end of the project. So looking at this diagram, we are seeing in the left-hand side, starting up a project, and then over on the right-hand side, we'll see closing a project as one of the processes in the green boxes here. And the processes are used by different people within a project. So you can see there are sort of lanes going across. One is called at the top directing, one's called managing, one's called delivering. So in PRINCE2, we have the project manager in the center there, the managing level. And in fact, most of the processes are there to support the work of the project manager. At the top, we have a project board, which is equivalent to a steering group or a sponsoring group of some sort. We call them the project board. They're responsible for overall direction of the project and that sort of high level of accountability. And then the delivery level at the bottom, here we have the specialist team managers who will be actually responsible for the creation of the deliverables of the products. That's why their process is called managing product delivery. The journey goes from left to right. We have a little bit of work that we do before we consider the project has formally started, and that's called starting up a project, where we do an initial check on the feasibility, the viability of the project. Is this a sensible project to even begin? Then we move into initiating a project, where we do the serious planning to start with. And then we break the project down into any number of stages that's appropriate to that project. When we're in the middle of a stage, we use controlling a stage for the day-to-day activities of the project manager and their relationship with the team managers who are managing product delivery. The end of stages are quite interesting in PRINCE2 because they represent a boundary for the authority of the project manager at any one time. So at the end of each given stage, the project manager will need to report back to the project board to seek the authority to go into the next stage. So was there a question there?
Yeah, Tracy, was that a question? No, she muted herself.
Not working. Okay. So at the end of a stage, we have the boundary there, which is like almost like a fire break in a project life cycle, where the project board need to be assured that we've made the progress we said we're going to make, and that it is worthwhile and viable to move into the next stage. That's a part of the principle behind management by stages. And so we'll keep that going until finally we come to the final stage of the project, and at the end of that we go through some activities to bring a project to a clear and neat ending. So the process model shown here is sort of a useful overview. Each one of the processes has more detail within it, giving the project manager or the team manager or the board a set of activities that they will do, perhaps in a certain sequence or some of them at the same time, depending on the type of process it is. So that gives us that sense of the shape of PRINCE2. Just a word about some of the case studies that we pick up and some of the comments that we get back. This company in Germany, a technology company, talked about how it gave a fresh mindset to their project managers, and they got that quite quickly by using PRINCE2. The Ugandan bank in Africa, their benefits seem to be around risk and issue management. So that's what they were getting out of it. And it's interesting that different users, different organizations will get different benefits from using PRINCE2. And I guess it depends on their background and their level of maturity and what they need fixing the most to move forward. Government department in the US, we're strong on the scalability, this flexibility of PRINCE2, and they were using it on what they call their small projects, just a few $1,000s to projects of tens of millions, which is quite a range. And then finally, the gas company in Australia who talked about PRINCE2's specific focus on planning and managing by products, understanding products, and then also in how we manage a stage and manage the boundaries between the stages.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
So I've had this question for a while. It isn't necessary. You brought up some interesting concept here of a more flexible model, right? With
Yep.
PRINCE2. And yep. But I have to be honest that I struggle a lot with some of the agile concepts, not because I don't believe in them, but because I come from, my background. I've worked in like major capital engineering projects, right? We were building facilities. I've worked in IT projects, right? And I've worked on organizational development projects and, launch projects for the pharmaceutical industry. And I guess I always thought that the complexity of each of these projects required certain modes of operating, but they all seem to have some common principles that kind of, if you go back to your principles slide, it looks like it covers it, right?
Yeah.
But what I get a little confused on is the processes, right? If you go back to can you just go back to that previous slide with the processes?
Sure.
While I really understand what you're saying here, I always find people, saying to me, well, I think, Agile is great and all that, but we need a more, I guess, rigorous approach to implementation of certain types of projects, especially on the engineering side, where they feel like the boundaries or the gates of, basis of design, detailed design, construction, etc., are needed to really implement those projects that have that complexity. And I guess, I always thought they really should be more unified in a lot of ways, but then I understand why there's different approaches, right, for different types of projects. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit with regard to Prince? Because it seems like, having been exposed to different types of project methodology, this is much, it kind of covers everything, but it's also not as detailed, if you will.
Yes, yeah, okay. Robert, you've made some really interesting points there. And
I apologize to take away from you. I didn't want to take away from your presentation, but
no.
I'm struggling with it a little bit too,
Yeah, sure. And some of the things you've hinted at, I will touch on it again in a few moments.
Okay.
But you were expressing a little bit of a concern with Agile, and coming from an engineering background, that's really understandable, isn't it? Because we have to be careful here that pendulums swing backwards and forwards, and I think we have to take a long-term view and not get carried away by something that's new and modern but might be a passing phase. Now, I'm not saying Agile is a passing phase, because it's been with us for 20 something years now, but it's brought some really interesting things into project management, but it's at the same time it's brought some challenges. And it's brought some challenges to the very nature of project management, because there will be some extreme agile people who would dismiss the idea of project management altogether because it's not necessary with Agile. That's not something I believe, but I've heard that said more than once.
Yeah.
And so I have to be careful how I express this, because it's a little frustrating at times to hear that the sort of methods that we know we need are being rejected, really, because development teams want to be free to do whatever they want to do. And I exaggerate to make a point here. In engineering, that's not the case. And I think we have to remember that Agile came from a software development background, didn't it? That was the roots of the original Agile manifesto, and it was quite valid for that. But then to go and apply it everywhere unthinkingly is not helpful. And so what we try and do with PRINCE2 here is to say there's governance here, there's control, but there is as much as you want. And I think when you start applying it in engineering or construction or software engineering, you're going to have different interpretations of the needs. And we have tried to make PRINCE2 flexible enough to be valid in that situation. But like any method, it's never going to be a silver bullet. It's never going to be the ultimate answer to everything. There will always be other things, and industry standards, industry ways of doing things will often need to be brought in to make it really work there. And engineering is clearly one of those areas. So this is a really good challenge, Robert.
Yeah, and I can understand that, you know, some of the rigidity of the other project management methodologies can be frustrating for people. And, you know, when you hear Agile and hear some of the concepts, people, I guess, are so weary of the other ways of doing things that they grab onto it really quick, but it isn't always a panacea, right? And I'm glad that you're bringing that up, because, you know, anything new or different doesn't necessarily make it, you know, perfect. There's always, you know, some concessions that you have to make, and potentially some integration of different approaches that need to be had, right? It's not all one or the other.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. The little word "or" is really quite dangerous, isn't it? And we have to be careful. It's not one or the other. There can be something in between. There can be a combination. And just because something has been around for a few years, it doesn't make it any less true or applicable.
Thank you. I appreciate your feedback on that.
That's great. Thank you. That's a great comment. Okay, then. So let's move on to PRINCE2 Agile, and that conversation actually has sort of nicely introduced us to this idea of what we mean by Agile. I tried to be appropriate with the choice of sport here, by the way. This isn't a UK sport, as you can obviously see. What is agile is often a question that comes along with what is waterfall. Now, waterfall is a problem word in a sense, because it is often used by people in the agile realms in a negative way to describe what was there before waterfall. So, sorry, what was there before agile? In a way that, in order to argue the case for your product, you will criticize an alternative product and look at its shortfall. So we get this, we get agile, we get waterfall, and we get those ideas. But actually, there's the word or, agile or waterfall. If we're posing that question, are we posing the right question? Is that the right thing to be asking? Or is it already pigeonholing us into one of just two solutions? Let me just look at some things that I have recently found just by going through the likes of LinkedIn online and looking at some of the discussions around this. So here, just the headline in this graphic here, waterfall versus agile. So there looks like it's a battle. It's one or the other. That's the image posed there. Same again with this one. And look at the words there. The epic battle between waterfall and agile methodologies in project management. Which one will reign supreme? It makes for a great storyline, but it's not helpful to project managers to have that sort of one or the other argument. I quite like this one. I wasn't quite sure what the author of the article was going on to say, but the headline was quite interesting. There's no such thing as a waterfall project. I've heard that argued as well, this idea that we've never had requirements absolutely fixed before we move on to design, and then we pin down design and we go into development and implementation. It's not as straightforward as that, and it never has been. More recently, we're hearing talk of hybrid approaches, aren't we? And where there's this combination of waterfall and agile, and that we're seeing both things happening. So that's a step towards something a little bit more grown up in our discussion about types of approaches. This was a nice little paragraph that I picked up as well. The agile movement has greatly enriched the project management landscape. I would agree with that. Unfortunately, the cult of agile is doing more harm than good with its narrow evangelical views. Right. That's quite critical. Project management has always included elements of agility, and I have pointed out on numerous occasions that agility is a continuum, with agile simply being at the extreme end of that continuum. And then here's an example of a continuum. Waterfall at the one end. I like the humor built into this. Waterfall if you must, agile if you insist. But the idea of a continuum is far more realistic. It's, instead of speaking of black and white, it speaks of a range of colors, doesn't it? And that spectrum, that continuum is what I think we really find on our projects. That's the reality of life there. Now, this to me is just a really important concept here. And I'm just pulling on something from PRINCE2. And this is drawn as an idea from the process diagram we saw a few moments ago. And I talked about how we got 3 levels: directing, managing, and delivering. What PRINCE2 gives us is a lot of guidance around the directing level, an awful lot of guidance around the managing level for the project manager, because it's the project manager who's carrying an awful lot of the responsibility here for liaising upwards and downwards in this diagram, and for the planning, for the risk management, for all different aspects of project management. So PRINCE2 is rich in the guidance it gives for those. PRINCE2 also talks about the delivery level, but that is a far lighter touch. And as it says here, PRINCE2 does not impose the approach to performing delivery work, which means that managing a project and delivering the work on a project really should be seen as 2 separate things. So that allows the delivery level to use any type of approaches, as agile as we wish, as non-agile as we wish, if that's relevant. Anywhere on that spectrum that we talked about can be used there. If a project manager has experience, if a project manager has qualifications, and has a variety of experiences, that project manager should be able to pick up a project in any sector, in any type of organization. Okay, there are always going to be some challenges around that, but project management is a transferable skill. So we can use it whether we're managing agile or whether we're managing non-agile work. Which means that PRINCE2 is already agile enabled. And in fact, this is a quote from the PRINCE2 Agile book itself. Nothing needs to be removed or significantly changed within PRINCE2. It just needs to be tailored to the type of delivery approach that's being used. And just here's some of the ways in which we would do that. And so, as I've said, PRINCE2 Agile has got the core of the book is, this is what PRINCE2 is saying. And then the value that it adds is around all of the techniques and the behaviors that's expected in the Agile world. So PRINCE2 focuses on understanding the products, but it doesn't set out all the products right at the start. We will learn a lot of those as we go along. And thanks to that principle of continued business justification, we see the focus on value, making sure that what we create is of value to the organization that's paying for this project. That's the business justification there. Dividing a project into stages allows for planning to the appropriate level. And we wouldn't plan a 3-year project on a day-by-day basis for the whole of the 3 years. That would be fairly pointless, because we know as soon as the project starts, that project plan is already under threat. And so we would have this overall project plan, but then when we get into the stages, we have a more detailed plan for this piece of work, and that supports things like sprints within Agile. At the end of each stage, we've got the opportunity to replan, to refocus what we're doing. So the adaptability is there as well. The use of tolerances that we've already mentioned, they empower people by giving the team managers an overall work package, if we like, with targets, but with tolerances, with flexibility. We empower them to do what they're skilled in doing. As a project manager, I've worked on projects where I've not been able to create any of the projects, any of the products that we are called to deliver. I didn't have those skills, but that's not my job. That's the job of the teams and the team managers. So there's flexibility there. Learning from experience, as we've said, one of the principles is that we learn the lessons, and things like retrospectives in agile approaches really support that, and the PRINCE2 principle sits very comfortably with that as well. And the space and the guidance that PRINCE2 gives to allow tailoring and to allow the adaptation of PRINCE2 to the organizational context. What type of organization is this? What do they need their project management approach to be doing? PRINCE2 is flexible to enable that to happen. So PRINCE2 can be customized into an organizational setting. So we can see PRINCE2 Agile as a form of extension, really, to PRINCE2, because PRINCE2 has got this inbuilt flexibility, this agility already in there. And then PRINCE2 Agile adds to that all of the language of agile approaches, all of the behaviors expected, and doesn't do it in a way that contradicts PRINCE2. It does it in a way that marries the two together. And that marriage idea of PRINCE2 and Agile can also be seen in the ideas behind a fighter jet like this. I've read that they are built with a purposely unstable construction. That there's an instability in a fighter jet which allows a tremendous amount of agility when it's in the air, because that's obviously what's needed. And yet that fighter jet needs control, it needs governance, it needs to be properly driven and directed. And so that coming together of the flexibility that's there because of the way it's built, but also the governance, the control, is the perfect combination for a fighter jet and for a project using Agile.
Thomas Quinn here. I actually work with that. If you look at some of the advertisements for joining the Navy, the Air Force, and they're showing a much more modern than that frame jet flying away from you.
Yeah.
If you concentrate and look at the control surface, they flutter. It's called an astable airframe, and you need constant input from the computer, or else it'll just go out of control. You don't hold the control surfaces static. As it's flying, they're doing all this all the time, so you don't flip over and die. It's very interesting.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah.
Sorry, physicist, software engineer. You know, we're gonna say. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. Okay, so in the PRINCE2 Agile book, in the guidance there, what we see are how Agile fits with the PRINCE2 principles, and particularly it looks at relevant Agile behaviors and how they support and work with the PRINCE2 principles. The sort of behaviors that we see here: self-organization, transparency, collaboration, rich communication, exploration. those sort of agile behaviors fit really nicely with that. The themes in PRINCE2, each theme in the Agile book is given an overview. So it doesn't just, the book doesn't repeat what's in the PRINCE2 main book, but it gives a summary of each theme. So a shortened chapter, and then supported with all of the concepts, the techniques, and the guidance that would be relevant to risk management and that would be relevant to plans or to quality. They are then included in those chapters. Agile and the processes, well, just like we saw in the earlier diagram, the majority of the focus here is on the delivery process, because that's where it's really going to happen. That's where the most of the agile techniques take place. So those concepts will be referenced there. And then there's a focus on things like requirements, rich communication, frequent releases, all of the things that we probably know around agile, things that make agile, particular way of doing things. They're covered in that as well. So the people who can benefit by using PRINCE2 Agile, well, project managers who are using Agile a lot would perhaps benefit from the governance and the support and control that we can wrap around it. And then looking from the other way, if people are already involved in a PRINCE2 project that's now starting to use Agile, that would be very useful for them. Agile practitioners who want to learn more about a project management method, and people new to Agile who want to really see their Agile capability and their project management capability both built alongside each other. So this sort of statement about how those are working together can really, really help them. So to summarize in just a couple of brief statements, PRINCE2 is truly flexible, adaptable, and tailorable on its own. PRINCE2 Agile takes us into that marriage of governance and agility, with the image of the fighter jet there to help us to pin that one down. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to that. We've got a little bit of time now if there are any thoughts or questions. So if I stop sharing, and John, hand it back to you if you want to.
Okay. Well, I don't have to put my slide up yet. Anybody have any questions? We have about 6 minutes left.
Hey, John, it's Dane from PeopleCert. I promise this isn't a pre-rehearsed plant question. I hadn't seen the presentation prior to today, but I did put my my question there in the chat, just as a reply to some of the participants' comments around the agility continuum and striking that right balance. And I'll let you just sort of take a look at the question. I'm very curious and keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, let's have a look then.
So for those of you who are driving, I'll read the question then. The question that Dane posted was that to John was, what do you see as the opportunities and roles of project managers in uniting some of the, quote, evangelical communities, unquote, that tend to gravitate towards or, quote, insist, unquote, as represented on the agility continuum in striking the right balance for a project based on, on its actual business requirements and needs? How can you drive consensus for project stakeholders and delivery teams to create that, quote, optimized fighter airframe, unquote?
Nicely read, John. Do you know what? I think we're starting to see some of that happening now, that hopefully we've been through the sort of excessive evangelical phase. And I'm seeing articles saying, oh, Agile's not working, problems with Agile, and so on. We don't want to throw that out. We want to, something has been created that's really quite interesting and really quite helpful in many ways. And so I think we need to be the voice of reason going forward to say we've just got more, we've got more tools in our toolbox now than we had a few years ago. But let's use the right tool for the right job, and not make the project fit the method, but make the method fit the project. So it's things like that. It's that sort of thinking, and I think project managers are in a special position to be able to do this, and that's what I'd love to see happening. I'd love to see some sensible debate, some sensible guidance around this, that we can go forward and we can learn from all of this, and we're not having to keep reinventing something, but we can build on this, and we can have that view of the continuum, which is very helpful.
All right, thanks for that answer, John. We have about 2 minutes left for either one longish question or two very short questions. Anybody else have any question for John?
Hey, John, just curious, can you do PRINCE2 and sort of a, I'm going to say in a bubble, meaning I know we talk about in some ways that you can start Agile with a project, even if you're doing other approaches of project management and development. And I come from a tax technology background, so it's software that I deal with. Okay. But would you be able to say, look, I have a project and I want to try PRINCE2? Would you be able to do that, or do you need management or leadership around it to support that, like that board you were talking about, et cetera? Or can you do it in isolation and come up with a successful experience that you can then share at a wider area?
Yeah, that's interesting, Tom, because that's isn't that useful to be able to do this as a trial project? And there's nothing like a successful result to be able to demonstrate the power of what you've done. And yet at the same time, it would be the ideal would be to have some form of senior management champion, at least, because they have got a role to play.
Right. And
if they don't know what that is, you are fighting a battle there, perhaps. But nevertheless, it could still work. I'd still recommend trying that.
Okay.
And but seeking out, you don't need a lot of champions, but if you've got a champion somewhere, that's I've seen that work several times in organizations that I've been consulting with, and they've had just a couple of people at project management level and a single senior person, and together they've done it. They've got that sort of pilot one there, and it's a principle of change management, actually, isn't it? That if you start small and then grow from that point. I forget who said that. There's a change management writer who talks about starting small and growing slowly.
Yep.
So, yeah, good way of doing it.
I appreciate that. Thank you, John.
Cheers.
Okay, we're going to just take a pause here. I'm going to share a slide here. And so first of all, we're just going to end the recording portion. We'll have another 15 minutes left for you to continue to ask John questions. But I want to, for the recording, I want to thank John very much for this presentation on PRINCE2 Agile. It's very interesting. I've learned something new today.